Welcome to the GCN Tech Clinic, where we aim to answer your bike and tech related questions. You can submit your questions using the hashtag AskGCNTech in the comments section down below, and we'll endeavour to answer as many of them as possible. So without further ado, let's get into this week's first question, which comes from Ollie, who says, Shimano's instructions for 11-speed front derailleurs says to leave 1 to 3 millimeters of space between the big chainring and the chain guide. My questions are, does this change the shifting performance and the likeliness of the chain dropping? And if it does, is it better to have it in at 1 millimeter so that the chain is less likely to drop, or to set it to 3 millimeters so it's easier to put the chain back on if you do drop it? Well, yeah, it's a good question, but it's designed to work within that range. So as long as it is within that 1 to 3 millimeters, you shouldn't have any problems of dropping or unshipping your chain. And that's like the sweet spot area. Where it becomes a problem of dropping your chain is if you then extend it above that 3 millimeters, then that could be an issue. So 1 to 3 millimeters, aim for that. If you have it in tighter, just to go the other way, there's a good chance that your front mech will actually, the teeth of the chainring will rub on the front mech. So you don't want that to happen either, especially when you go from the big to the small ring. But I hope that answers your question. So just aim for that 1 to 3 millimeter range. Next question is from Joe, who says, Hi GCN, I recently purchased my first full carbon bike and he's terrified of cracking it. Is it safe to clamp the seat post in a bike stand for maintenance? Yes, in most cases, that is perfectly fine. The reason for this is the seat post is actually designed to be clamped inside the frame, so it's quite strong in that direction. Areas such as the top tube is the classic no-no, because it's an area that is designed not to be clamped and is not strong in that direction. It's usually quite thin, the carbon on the down tube and the top tube, so yeah, definitely don't clamp it there. But whenever you do clamp carbon, it is worth just being a bit gentle and maybe even putting something in the stand to grip the carbon, so something soft that can just go over the clamp, just so that it's not, being too abrasive on it. Next question is from Alex Conto Frios, who says, should I replace rusty bolts for my stem? Can I use standard M4 bolts from DIY shops? Yes, as long as the pitch and of the thread is the same and you get the correct diameter bolt, yeah, go right ahead. One thing I would suggest is using probably a slightly more expensive stainless steel bolts. They won't rust, rather than super cheap lightweight ones. And the other thing is yeah, in DIY stores they have little bolts. They're so cheap, you get them up for a few pennies or a few cents in most cases. So yeah, by all means, swap them out if they need replacing. You definitely don't want a rusty bolt failing on your stem as you're going down a steep hill or descending. Next question is from Owen Coupland, who says, is it a better idea to save up for big upgrades like wheels or group sets, or buy lots of little upgrades as and when you can afford them? Oh, well, I would say look at the videos we've done on upgrades and like best value upgrades. I would definitely do those first. Things like inner tubes and faster tyres you can get for much less than the price of a set of wheels, and they'll probably make more of a difference, to be honest. So I would go for those upgrades first, definitely. I think number one upgrade, I always say, like latex inner tubes for speed, or going tubeless, or getting tubeless tyres, or some faster rolling tyres. Like that would be the best thing. And then there's just so many things that you can do cheap, and in some cases not even spend money on, like just adjusting your position and getting more aero. Always do all that stuff first before shelling out big bucks on some shiny new wheels, would be my advice. Next question is from that is actually his name. He says, how often do the pros change their tyres in a grand tour? In most cases, not often as you would think. It's a case of they replace them when they need to. So if the tyre flats, the mechanic will take the tyre off and put a fresh one on that wheel, but they have loads of spare wheels. And if they wear down again, or if they're just inspected and have cuts in them, but they haven't flatted yet, they'll probably take that tyre off and put a new one on. But in most cases, the tyres last a long time, and they certainly aren't replacing them every single day. You might, get a couple of sets of tyres per rider through a Grand Tour on the road stages. However, there are exceptions to this, such as UAE Team Emirates, who use a very fast Vittoria Corsa Speed time trial tyre that's tubeless. These tyres are reported to not last very long at all because they're so thin and they're so fast. They're replaced in some instances, every couple of time trials or every time trial. And there are instances where if you've got a team leader or someone that's, leading the GC, they will take extra attention to that bike and that equipment and make sure that that's got the freshest, cleanest, best tyres on all the time because there's, they don't want any punctures and things like that. So yeah, it varies is the answer. Mohammed Selaning S says he's planning to upgrade his wheels, but it will cost more than the frame. Should I upgrade the frame or the wheels? We get a lot of questions about upgrades, but there are no wrong answers really. I would say, if you do upgrade your wheels now, you'll still be able to use those wheels on a future bike. So you haven't really got anything to lose by upgrading them. And wheels always do make a bike look absolutely, don't they? So go for it. Next question is from Conor Verbruggen, who says, does any brand do brakes for TT extensions? So brakes in the Tribar position. He says it makes more sense to have them as you spend more time there than you do on the bullhorns on the base bar. I'm surprised the pros haven't tried it, even if they'd only use it once or twice. Well, the reason why it doesn't exist is because the brakes are on the base bar. So when you're going around a technical section or you're descending on a time trial bike where you need to be in that position to use the brakes, they're there where you need them. And that's a safer position to kind of be braking in rather than braking like this and then going forwards. Also, the reason why you don't have them is because then that would make a really complicated braking system, having two separate braking lines going into the brakes, and would probably add quite a bit of weight to what is already a pretty heavy bike. Although with hydraulic systems, it does make that more possible to do. So maybe we might see someone experiment with it in the future. I personally don't think it's that necessary, and it's going to add a fair bit of weight and unnecessary complexity, but I can see the advantage if you were riding a time trial bike on a non-closed road and it was quite busy. If you want to be in the Tribars, then yeah, you can be there and be a bit more comfortable. But yeah, I can't see it taking off personally. Last question this week is from Pancham Shah, who says, hi GCN, should you really move your gear levers inwards for aero gains? What he's talking about here is, I think, what we've seen on Remco Evenepoel's bike, and also John, a couple of years ago, visited a chap who'd taken this to the absolute extreme as well, where you change how your levers are clamped on the handlebars so that they're sort of angled in like that with the hoods. And some people, have managed to achieve very aerodynamic positions doing this. And Remco Evenepoel is, he's really into his tech and he's really into his sort of aero gains. And I would bet that he's probably had this tested in a wind tunnel and he's found something. He's found a position that works for him. But that's the key. What works for him might not work for you or I. And by all means, experiment twisting your shifters in and see if you can get faster doing it and do some testing, and that's the only way to really find out. One thing to be aware of though is make sure you do clamp them so they are safely in position, and just make sure you can change gear and still operate the brakes with them in that position. Don't go out and put them in a weird position and then crash, please. But yeah, by all means, try something out. So that's it for this week. Fortunately, that's all we've got time for. So sorry if I've not been able to answer your question, but keep them coming down below. It's always a pleasure answering them, so we'll try and get through as many as possible. Hopefully we'll get around to your question eventually. Before I go though, got a quick question for you guys. If you expect the unexpected, doesn't that make the unexpected expected? Let us know in the comments. I'll see you next time. Bye.